Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. Well, have you been told that property taxes in Wichita and Kansas are low? Well, that's partially true. But an ongoing study reveals that, generally, property taxes on commercial and industrial property in Wichita are high. In particular, taxes on commercial property in Wichita are among the highest in the nation. Now, the study I refer to is produced by the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy in conjunction with the Minnesota Center for Fiscal Excellence, and it's titled 50 State Property Tax Comparison Study, and the most recent version is from March of this year. It may be found on the internet, and the study uses a variety of residential, apartment, commercial, and industrial property scenarios to analyze the nature of property taxation across the country. And I gathered data from the selected tables for Wichita. I'll present some of the data to you now, but you can find a link to the complete document along with the summary table I've created of data relating to Wichita, of course, on my website, The Voice for Liberty at wichitaliberty.org. It's important to understand the difference between the appraised value of property and the assessed value. Appraised value is the market value, at least as determined by the tax assessor. Assessed value is what is multiplied by the mill levy rates of various taxing jurisdictions in order to compute the tax owed. Now, in Kansas, residential property is assessed at 11.5% of its appraised value. So to compute your tax, you'd take the appraised value, again, that's the market value or something approximating it, multiply it by 11.5%, and you produce the assessed value. Then you'd multiply that by the mill levy rates for each of the taxing jurisdictions the property is within, like the city, county, school district, state, fire district, cemetery district, Drainage District, Improvement District, Library District, Country Club Improvement District, Self-Supported Municipal Improvement District, and so forth. While residential property is appraised at 11.5% of appraised value, commercial property is assessed at 25% of appraised value, and public utility property at 33%. Now, this means that commercial property pays 2.18 times the property tax rate as residential property. The U.S. average for this ratio is 1.716. Now, whether higher assessment ratios on commercial property as compared to residential property is good public policy, well, that's a subject for debate. But because Wichita's ratio is high, it leads to high property taxes on commercial property as compared to the nation. Now, for residential property taxes, such as on your home, Wichita ranks below the national average. For a property valued at $150,000, the effective property tax rate in Wichita is 1.324%, while the national average is 1.508%. And the results for a property valued at $300,000 were similar. Looking at commercial property, the study uses several different scenarios with different total values and different values for fixtures. For example, for a $100,000 valued property with $20,000 in fixtures, the study found that the national average for property tax was $2,591, or 2.159% of the property value. But for Wichita, the corresponding values are $3,588, or 2.990%, and that ranks ninth from the top amongst the states. Wichita property taxes for this scenario are 38.5% higher than the national average. Now, in other scenarios with larger property values, Wichita performs similarly with property taxes substantially higher than the national average. Now, when we consider different scenarios of industrial property, we find that Wichita taxes are lower, again, when compared to other states and cities. For urban industrial property, often Wichita is near the national average or slightly below. And as the proportion of property value that is machinery and equipment increases, Wichita ranks better on property taxes, and that's because Kansas no longer taxes business machinery and equipment. Now, a few weeks ago, you remember how I showed you that Wichita city officials and bureaucrats say that the city has only a small budget for economic development incentives. Now, as far as cash that can be spent, that may be true. But one of the things that Wichita often does is to forgive the payment of these property taxes, which you can see are high for commercial and industrial property. This has no cash cost to the city, but it does to taxpayers who must make up the difference, and it's many millions of dollars per year. Now, I'm in favor of government receiving less tax revenue. That leaves more in the productive private sector. But when the city of Wichita says that Company A must pay property taxes and Company B does not have to pay, well, the city takes on the role of master planner. The city is telling us that it knows better how to spend and invest than do people when spending and investing their own money. And as we've seen for many reasons on Wichita Liberty TV, planning and directing an economy is something government is poorly positioned to do. Short time horizons, lack of knowledge, perverse incentives, corruption, both real and petty. These are some of the reasons that government is not equipped to plan and manage the economy. But it seems that our leaders in Wichita are firmly convinced, despite past and present failures, that only government action can save Wichita. But we can easily identify problems in Wichita that government is solely responsible for creating, like the high taxes on commercial property in Wichita. That's something the city could immediately fix. Reduce tax rates for everyone. But then, government would have less power and influence, and the people would have more. That goes against the grain of most politicians and bureaucrats. Well, that's another episode of Wichita Liberty TV. Thank you for watching. I'm Bob Weeks.